Imagine walking into a doctor's office in the year 1890. The physician doesn't just look at a chart. He looks at you. He studies the tint of your skin, the warmth of your palm, the way you speak, and the very temperament of your soul. For 2,000 years, this was not magic. It was the highest form of science. But then, something happened. A shadow fell over the medical world. In less than 30 years, thousands of years of human wisdom were declared illegal. Ancient lineages of healing were burned to the ground. And you? You were reduced to a single letter on a plastic card. A. B. A, B, or O. Have you ever wondered why modern medicine treats you like a biological machine rather than a human being? Have you ever felt that your blood carries a deeper story, a map of your ancestors, that your doctor is forbidden from reading? Today we go back to the year 1900. We are going to uncover the greatest heist in human history. This is not just about a discovery. This is about a purge. A systematic, cold-blooded execution of medical diversity, funded by the wealthiest men to ever walk the earth. They didn't just find your blood type. They replaced your identity. Welcome to the erased century. For 20 centuries, Western medicine followed a logic that was as complex as nature itself. From the halls of ancient Greece to the prestigious universities of Renaissance Europe, physicians operated under the framework of constitutions. It was a system perfected by Hippocrates and refined by Galen. It divided humanity not by arbitrary letters, but by the balance of life itself. Sanguine, choleric, melancholic, phlegmatic. If you were sanguine, your blood ran warm and wet. You were optimistic, ruddy-faced, but prone to fevers. If you were melancholic, you were dominated by the black bile, cold and dry, lean, prone to deep thought and digestive struggle. This wasn't some folk remedy whispered in dark corners. This was the curriculum at Oxford, at Padua, at Bologna. It worked because it was diagnostic. A physician would look at your constitution and know exactly what would heal you and exactly what would kill you. What was medicine for one man was poison for another. The system treated you as an individual, shaped by the stars, the soil, and your lineage. It acknowledged that your blood was a living river of information. But as the 19th century drew to a close, the titans of industry were rising. Men like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie weren't interested in the complexity of the soul. They were interested in efficiency. They were interested in oil, in steel, in chemicals, and most importantly, they were interested in standardization. To build an empire, you cannot have 1,000 different ways to heal. You need one way, one system, one product. And to get there, they needed a hitman. Enter Abraham Flexner. In 1910, a man who was not a doctor, a man who held a degree in classics, was commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation to evaluate every medical school in America. This was the Flexner Report. On the surface, it claimed to be about quality control. It argued that there were too many doctors and too many competing philosophies. But look at the results. Within 20 years, more than half of all American medical schools were forced to close. 160 institutions in 1904. Only 66 remained by 1935. Which schools survived? Only those that surrendered to the biomedical model. Only those that agreed to stop teaching constitutional medicine. Only those that agreed that the human body was a standardized vessel for pharmaceutical intervention. If your school taught homeopathy, it was defunded. If your school taught herbalism or naturopathy, you were labeled a quack. If you taught that blood was a map of the Constitution, you were silenced. The Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations directed their massive wealth exclusively to schools that adhered to this new, simplified model. The money arrived for those who treated the symptom. The money disappeared for those who sought to understand the man. And right in the middle of this purge, a young pathologist in Vienna named Karl Landsteiner made a discovery that would change the world and provide the perfect tool for the new regime. While the Flexner brothers were busy tearing down the walls of ancient medical institutions, the laboratory became the new altar of truth. In 1901, Karl Landsteiner sat in his lab at the University of Vienna. He took blood samples from himself and 5 colleagues. He watched the way they interacted. Some clumped together in a violent rejection. Others flowed in harmony. In that moment, he reduced the 2,000-year-old mystery of the human spirit to 3 letters, A, B, and C, which we now call O. A year later, his students found the 4th, A, B. On the surface, this was a triumph. It made safe blood transfusions possible. It saved millions on the battlefields of World War I. For this, Landsteiner would receive the Nobel Prize in 1930. But we must look deeper than the prize. We must look at the timing and the institutional gravity that pulled Landsteiner into its orbit. In 1923, Landsteiner left Europe and moved to New York. He spent the rest of his career at the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. Pause for a moment and connect the dots. The Rockefeller Institute was directed by Simon Flexner. Simon was the brother of Abraham Flexner, the man who had just finished bankrupting every medical school that didn't fit the Rockefeller vision. The man who standardized the American medical education and the man who simplified human blood were working in the same building, funded by the same family, operating toward the exact same goal: the Great Reduction. They took the story of blood, the complex constitutional map of your ancestry, and they stripped it of its context. They turned your blood into a commodity, a universal, exchangeable part. In the eyes of the new system, you were no longer a sanguine individual with specific environmental needs. You were simply Group A, Type 2. But here is the chilling part. The old system wasn't wrong. It was just inconvenient for a world built on mass-produced medicine. For 3 weeks, I dug through 19th century medical texts, expecting to find that the old humoral system was just primitive superstition. What I found was far more disturbing. While the old doctors might have been wrong about black bile or the 4 humors as physical fluids, they were eerily accurate about their observations. Modern 21st century genetics is now quietly confirming what the purged doctors were saying all along. Your blood type is not just a label for transfusion. It is a disease map encoded in your DNA. In 2007, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that Type O individuals have a 66% reduction in the odds of developing severe malaria. But Type O also makes you a target for severe cholera. If your ancestors survived the Ganges Delta, they likely don't carry Type O. The disease literally carved the blood types of the survivors. Type A increases your susceptibility to smallpox and stomach cancer. Type B correlates with higher rates of tuberculosis. The old physicians used to call the sanguine constitution warm, wet, and prone to fevers. Today, we call that a type A or B antigen response to inflammatory pathogens. They didn't have the word antigen, but they were mapping the exact same vulnerabilities. They saw the pattern. Rockefeller saw the profit. By simplifying blood into 4 letters, they didn't just make transfusion safe, they made it impossible for you to understand your own biological history. They took a geologist's map of your ancestral struggle and turned it into a barcode. And once you are just a barcode, you are much easier to manage. You are much easier to classify. And as the 20th century moved into its darkest chapter, this classification would turn from a medical tool into a biological weapon. As the system solidified, blood became more than a medical category. Niche, it became a legal identity. In the early 20th century, a Polish physician named Ludwig Hirschfeld and his wife Hanna were stationed in Greece during the Great War. They had a unique opportunity. They tested the blood of over 8,000 soldiers from 16 different ethnic groups. What they discovered was the final nail in the coffin of universalism. Blood types weren't evenly distributed. Type A predominated in Western Europe. Type B surged as you moved toward India. Hirschfeld proposed a term that would later haunt history: biochemical races. He was trying to do with science what the ancient physicians had done with temperament: link blood to lineage. But in a world newly obsessed with standardization and control, this data didn't lead to personalized care. It led to the Blutgesetz, the blood laws. By 1935, the Nazi regime had twisted this research into a weapon of racial purity. They used blood types to define who was Aryan and who was other. The cruelest irony? Ludwig Hirschfeld was Jewish. He was eventually imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto, trapped by the very classification system he helped uncover. The story of blood had been stolen twice. First, by the capitalists who wanted to simplify you into a consumer. Second, by the ideologues who wanted to simplify you into a rank. But even as they tried to standardize us, nature left behind anomalies they could never explain. Enter the Basque people of the Pyrenees. Isolated, speaking a language unrelated to any other on Earth, the Basque carry a secret in their veins. They have the highest frequency of Rh-negative blood in the world, nearly 35%. In a standard evolutionary model, Rh-negative blood shouldn't exist in such high concentrations. Before modern medicine, an Rh-negative mother carrying an Rh-positive baby faced a horrific reality. Her own immune system would view her child as a foreign invader and attack it. A population with 35% Rh-negative frequency should have been selected out of existence by its own biology. Yet, the Basque persisted for thousands of years. Where did this blood come from? Science offers coincidence and isolation. But when you look at the map, Rh-negative clusters appear in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, the Canary Islands, and the edges of Scotland. These are the ancient ones, the pre-Indo-European lineages that were already there when the standardized migrations arrived. The modern system ignores these anomalies because they don't fit the 4-letter barcode. They don't fit the pharmaceutical model of the universal human. Part 4. The ultimate payoff. The silent record. Why does your doctor know your blood type, but never mentions what it means for your cancer risk? Why do we recognize 48 distinct blood group systems in 2025, yet 99% of the population only knows the one used for transfusion? The answer is as cold as a Rockefeller balance sheet. The system that replaced the ancient constitutions was never designed to help you trace your lineage or understand your unique vulnerabilities. It was designed to sort you, to categorize you for the database, to make you a predictable unit in a mass-produced society. The old physicians asked, Who is this person? And what story does their blood tell? The new system asks, what letter do we assign them for the transfusion? Those are two fundamentally different questions. One seeks to empower the individual. The other seeks to manage the herd. Your blood is a living record of every epidemic your ancestors survived. It is a map of the migrations they made and the environments that shaped them. It is the only part of you that hasn't been standardized by the digital age. Yet it is the part you know the least about. The constitutional story didn't stop being true just because they stopped teaching it. It was simply moved to the erased section of history. Somewhere in the gap between the letter on your ID card and the ancient memory in your cells, the truth is waiting. You are not a letter. You are a lineage. And your blood is the only book they couldn't burn, only hide. The question is, are you ready to start reading it again?